was a moonlit night in the middle of the harvest season. The kind of night where stars hung like jewels scattered across velvet, and the air was thick with a cool, eerie stillness. To the untrained eye, the farm looked silent, the barn empty, the fields whispering secrets to the gentle breeze. To anyone passing by, everything seemed peaceful, a picturesque scene waiting for tomorrow's sun. But the farmer was not at rest. He stood in the shadows, mind sharp, heart racing, poised in that electric moment before everything changed. Beneath the quiet exterior of the farm lay a tension that could be sliced through like a knife. He was not alone. It was just him and his worries, each one clawing at the edges of his composure. The towering corn stalks, now heavy with the weight of their golden bounty, swayed slightly in the night's air, their rustle sounding almost like whispers, secrets best kept in the dark. He could feel his breath hitch as he recalled what had happened just a week prior, when he first noticed that something wasn't right. Crops had started disappearing, fewer ears of corn, fewer pumpkins untouched in the fields. At first he dismissed it. Maybe it was the deer, or perhaps raccoons out for a midnight feast, but deep down he felt an unsettling instinct. Something was going on. He could feel it in his bones. As he gazed into the distance, he spotted a faint light flickering by the edge of the woods. His heart raced. It was like a beacon in the stillness. He wondered, suddenly torn between curiosity and dread. The last remnants of sunlight had long faded, and now the shadows stretched long and deep, embracing whatever lurked behind them. He tightened his grip on the old rifle cradled in his hands, worn but reliable. Each warping line in the wood told a history of protection, of guarding what is his. The chill of the night sank deeper into his skin as he made his way toward the woods, every step muffled by the soft dirt beneath his worn boots, almost as if the ground yearned to swallow the sound of his approach. But he couldn't turn back, not now. He had to know what was going on. Were they thieves, or something worse? His mind flickered back to a story he'd heard long ago, whispered among the locals in town, the story of a group that preyed on farms like his, slipping through the night, taking whatever they could without remorse. The legends felt too distant, too dramatic until now. With the trees closing in around him, he felt the darkness tighten its grip. So he focused, squinting against the shadows as he approached the edge of the woods. The flickering light pulsed steadily, igniting a mixture of fear and determination inside him. As he neared, he ducked behind an oak, its gnarled roots like the twisted fingers of a long-forgotten giant. Peering through the leaves, he caught his breath. There, just up ahead, a group of 3 figures huddled around a makeshift fire, their faces obscured under hoods and worn clothing. They looked rough, hardened by life, and their laughter drifted through the air terribly carefree and frighteningly out of sync with the night. He couldn't hear their words, but their gestures were clear. They were enjoying something stolen, maybe his corn, maybe something worse. Adrenaline surged through him, pooling in the base of his spine. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to retreat into the safety of his home, but his roots, his heritage, pulled him forward. This was his land, his family's legacy, and he wouldn't let it fall into the hands of those who would take without working, without giving. He steadied his breath, reminded himself of the weight of the rifle, and emerged from the cover of the tree line, a predator with purpose. The figures paused, suddenly aware, their laughter sliced through by the thudding heartbeats in his ears. He raised his voice, steady and unyielding. The trio froze, eyes widening as they registered his presence. The glow of the fire danced across their faces, revealing a mix of surprise, then defiance. The biggest one stepped forward, his bravado clashing with the fear that flickered behind his eyes. "Just having a little fun, old man." He scoffed, heart racing in that delicate balance between fear and courage. "You're on my land, stealing my crops." Laughter erupted again, but this time it felt hollow, desperate. "Come on," the leader sneered. "Who's going to care? It's just corn." The others snickered, emboldened by his words, but they didn't know him. They hadn't seen his sweat stain the ground or tasted the dirt between his calloused fingers. With that, something shifted within him, a shield hardening around that weak point in his heart. He knew what was at stake. The many nights spent in the fields, the countless hours nurturing every seed, every bloom, it was not just about the corn. It was a legacy, a lifeline back to his ancestors. With that thought anchoring him, he stepped forward, dangerously close. "Every ear of corn has a story," he said, his voice low and solid. "A story of hard work, sweat, and dreams. You think you can just take it." And for the first time, the laughter ebbed, replaced by a taut silence that buzzed in the air. The leader glanced back at his companions, uncertainty creeping into the corners of his posture. "We were just looking for something to eat," he mumbled, but the voice wavered. He could see the truth now. The desperation painted their faces. They were not just thieves. They were struck by life's cruelty, struggling with burdens he could relate to. The weight of hardship pressed down on them, the same way it had once pressed down on him. Years ago, he had been that hungry, that lost, looking for any way to scrape by when the fields didn't yield and the market turned cold. "Listen," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I understand hard times. We all go through them, but you don't have to come here and take what isn't yours. You think stealing will fill you." He lowered the rifle, allowing it to hang loosely at his side, the threat ebbing away like the smoke from the fire. Their eyes shifted, doubt spreading among them. The leader asked, bravado faltering, "Help me in the fields, work with me. I can provide food for you, but you have to earn it." The words felt heavy in the air between them. There was a moment of silence, a flicker of something akin to hope igniting in the dim light. The leader blinked, mouth opening slightly as if to refuse, but then he caught the farmer's gaze. Something shifted in that space. Two worlds colliding, two souls, one of desperation and one of resilience finding a path forward. The flickering fire illuminated more than just their faces. It revealed a chance for something new. Finally, the leader huffed out a sigh, shoulders sagging with the weight of decision. "Fine," he said. The farmer nodded, that sense of kinship blossoming in the silence. As they made their way back to the farmhouse, the quiet felt different. The air was still thick, but it pulsed with an uneasy warmth. They exchanged night stories, laughs mingled with questions, a kind of tenuous understanding blossoming in the cold night. The harvest may have seemed silent, but it was never truly empty. Beneath the blanket of darkness, life began anew. The farmer, standing in position, had transformed the stillness into a moment of connection, not just grappling with fear, but seizing the chance to unite. In that moment, the rustling corn stalks didn't just whisper secrets. They sang of new beginnings, of resilience born from the hardest soil. And in the long shadows of that moonlit night, the farmer understood homes were built not in silence, but through the voices we share, and in every whispered promise to rise together, stronger than before. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the silent fields. A thick blanket of silence enveloped the farm, each whisper of the wind sending shivers through the air. It looked still, peaceful, even a scene right out of a postcard. Yet beneath that serene facade, tension simmered and the heart of the farm beat steadily in the shadows. There he stood, the farmer, rooted in his place, a sentinel watching over his land like a warrior on guard. His weather-beaten face was a map of hard work and resilience, carved by years spent toiling under the sun. He clutched a rusted pitchfork, the metal cool against his palm, each dent and scratch telling tales of years gone by. The summer harvest had been bountiful, but something was amiss. A week prior, strange footprints had begun to appear near the edges of the field's human footprints, not animal. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end as he counted the days, feeling the weight of uncertainty crush his chest. At first, he dismissed the feeling, but the more he watched, the more he felt that unsettling instinct rise, a sense that someone was watching him, waiting for the right moment to strike. Tonight, he was vigilant, eyes sharp, scanning the horizon, each rustling leaf demanding his attention. He had seen shadows moving in the corn when the sun thought it set for the day. Voices, low and conspiratorial, drifted through the air like an unwelcome rumor. No, he wouldn't let fear grip him. He wasn't just protecting crops, he was safeguarding a legacy. As he moved closer to the fields, he spotted a flicker of light dancing on the outskirts. It pulsed eerily, almost like a heartbeat echoing in the dark. He felt adrenaline surge through him, drawing him toward that flickering beacon. What was it? A fire? And if so, whose fire was it? His heart raced, and as he walked, memories flooded back, stories from his father about thieves who prowled the night, preying on the unsuspecting. Pushing through the tall, fragrant stalks, he ducked low, wanting to remain hidden but also unable to resist the pull of the unknown. Breathing deeply, he quieted his thoughts, forcing himself to focus. Stealth was his ally. What he stumbled upon next sent a rush of ice through his veins. There, huddled in the shadows, three figures gathered around a small, crackling fire. Their faces were obscured by the darkness, but the glint of eyes reflected in the firelight made his heart pound. They were laughing, their voices cutting through the silence like knives. It was casual, almost carefree, and yet the sound felt wrong, a distasteful contrast to the tranquility of the night. He crept closer, just beyond the reach of the flames. Flexing his fingers around the pitchfork, he listened intently. Words floated through the air, conversations filled with bravado, but also traces of desperation. "Come on, just grab what you can. It's not like anyone cares about a few ears of corn," one of them said, and the urgency laced in their tone sent a chill down his spine. Suddenly, every ounce of instinct screamed at him to retreat. But he wasn't just any farmer. He had fought battles in quiet ways, cultivating not just crops but a way of life that grounded his family for generations. Faux bravery wouldn't save him, he needed a plan. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out from the cover of the corn, the moonlight washing over him like a spotlight. His voice boomed into the night, powerful enough to silence their laughter. The three figures froze, wide-eyed, taken aback by his sudden arrival. "What do you care?" spat the largest of the three, his bravado wavering under the weight of the farmer's steely gaze. "No," he replied, steady and unwavering. "It's my corn, my land." Laughter erupted around the fire again, but this time it sounded forced. They were trying to mask the uncertainty that crept into their expressions. The fear that had bubbled beneath their bravado was exposed, the vulnerability shining through. Each one was hungry, not just for food but for connection, desperation clawing at their insides. He could see it, the hunger in their eyes was familiar to him. He too had felt that gnawing emptiness in the years when crops did not yield, when storms threatened all his hard work. It was a darkness that could swallow anyone whole. For a fleeting moment, he remembered the stories of his predecessors, those who had tilled the land before him, and how they would share rather than steal, always believing in the power of community. He said suddenly, the words feeling strange yet right, "Help me in the fields and I'll feed you." The proposal hung heavy in the stillness, mixing with the fragrant air. The trio exchanged glances, unsure, shadows flickering across their faces as the fire crackled. Their laughter faded into an uncomfortable silence. "Work," the leader of the group scoffed, though it lacked its earlier bravado. "Yes," he insisted, stepping closer, lowering the pitchfork slightly. "Hard work can feed more than just your stomach." One of the younger men shifted, the flicker of something unidentifiable breaching the surface of his guarded demeanor. The leader's confidence seemed to drain away like water through a sieve. "What do you know about us?" "More than you think," the farmer replied softly, capturing their gaze one by one. "I know what it's like to lose everything." A tension lingered in the air, pregnant with possibility. Without thinking, he stepped even closer to the fire, feeling the warmth wash over him, the soft glow illuminating the faces of these young men who had strayed from their own paths, lost in the night. "Give me one night," he continued, his voice steady and strong. "One chance to show you that there's dignity in working the land and planting our futures together. Come back tomorrow, and I'll show you how to plant seeds and reap rewards." Finally, something shifted in the leader's uncertain eyes, a spark of something new igniting beneath layers of pain and anger. "You'll regret this," he muttered, but it lacked fury this time. Instead, there was curiosity mingled with confusion. "I doubt it," the farmer replied, the corners of his mouth lifting into a small smile. And just like that, the dynamic changed. The laughter faded from their lips, swallowed by the weight of their newfound reality. They looked at him, and he saw it, the flicker of hope. They were hungry, but now he knew they were hungry for more than just food. They were hungry for purpose. They weren't just intruders. They were lost souls seeking a way back. The sun crested the horizon just as they began to work, revealing the earth drenched in gold and fresh morning dew. The quiet fields turned alive with the rustling of bodies moving in harmony, the sound of shovels scraping against the rich soil like a symphony beginning anew. As the farmer guided them through the routines of planting, stories began to flow. He shared tales of the land, of hardships and triumphs, while the young men, once filled with bravado, slowly opened up about their lives, the struggles that pulled them into dark alleys, the choices that led them astray. They laughed together, found joy in the mundane tasks and help that encouraged the soil to yield. Each day built upon the last, sweat and laughter bonding the newfound team. As the weeks rolled by, the farm shifted, colors vibrant and lush, the promise of harvest sweetening the air. They became a unit, forged by the simple act of working together. The farmer's heart swelled as he watched them transform once desperate and lost. Now they were breathing life back into the soil they tilled. The camaraderie sparked moments of levity, shared meals woven with stories that ran deeper than just mere survival. They became brothers under the sun, working hard and dreaming fiercely. And as the sugar corn swelled into golden beauties under their diligent hands, the bond grew tenfold. Visiting markets together, they began to sell their harvest, their laughter ringing through the stalls and echoing back into the quiet of the fields. What began as a night of apprehension turned into a symphony of voices, hundreds of stories woven into a new fabric of life, creating a legacy beyond simply planting seeds. But one still, dark night reminded them all of the past. The shadows returned. The flicker of those same malicious figures could once again be seen just beyond the corn. But this time, it wasn't just the farmer standing guard. It was a united front, a family forged in hardship, ready to stand against the darkness together. The farmer looked over his shoulder and he did not feel fear, only a fierce pride swelling in his chest. "We are not afraid," he said to the newcomers at his side, etched with strength and loyalty. "This land belongs to us." With guided eyes and determined hearts, they faced the encroaching shadows, ready to safeguard their harvest, their story, and the life they had built. The farm was no longer silent. It resonated with life, laughter, and the power of community, a legacy forged by soil, sweat, and the indomitable spirit of humanity, turning darkness into light. A cool breeze whispered through the thick fields of corn, the stalks swaying gently in the moonlight as if telling secrets to the night. The farm looked silent, peaceful, even, untouched by the world beyond its boundaries. Yet, in the dim light behind the old barn, the farmer stood poised and vigilant, a silent guardian watching over what mattered most. His heart pounded like a drum echoing in the quiet. He had spent days looking over his crops, days filled with unsettling thoughts. Something wasn't right. One by one, ears of corn had begun disappearing overnight. Whispers of mistrust crept into the corners of his mind, and he felt the shadow of fear grow larger with each passing dusk. In the stillness of the night, as shadows danced, he could almost hear the distant echoes of lost harvests, a reminder that not all that glimmers is safe. Armed with nothing but his instincts and an old hunting rifle slung loosely by his side, he prepared for whatever or whoever hour might come from the darkness. He had seen thieves take from other farms, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. He had heard the stories from townsfolk, tales of shadowy figures that stalked rural roads like ghosts, longing to snatch what wasn't theirs. As he took a deep breath, a flicker of light caught his attention in the distance. It bounced intermittently behind the far barn, pulsing like a heartbeat thrumming against the stillness. Was it a campfire, a signal? The idea sent a shiver down his spine. He clenched his fists, a mix of fear and determination flooding his veins. "Stay sharp," he murmured to himself, feet carrying him toward the source of the glow. The earth felt familiar beneath his boots, each crack and crevice soothed by years of care. But tension hung heavy in the air, pressuring him to act. He knew the shadows held no mercy. As he approached, he squatted low, peering around the edge of the barn to catch a glimpse of what lay beyond. 3 figures huddled around the flickering flames, hooded and tense, their features obscured. Laughter erupted in the night, wild and careless like a harbinger of bad news. One voice crackled through the night, taut with nerves. "We can't stay here long." Each word hit him like a blow, the realization solidifying in his gut. They were here to steal. His heart raced. This was it. It was do or die. They had no idea the risks they were taking. Hidden among the shadows, the farmer gripped his rifle tighter. He even felt a pang of empathy for the delinquents, having once been young and reckless himself. But what good would pity do now? He couldn't let them take what was his. Years of blood, sweat, and tears had gone into building this farm, shaping it into a legacy he would protect with every ounce of his being. "All right," he whispered to himself. Bursting into the clearing, the farmer revealed himself, stance wide, rifle held firmly. "This is my land." The three figures froze, their laughter turning into an uncomfortable silence. They turned slowly, shock painted on their faces, eyes wide as they registered the figure before them. A man carved from years of labor, fierce determination written in every line of his brow. The largest of the three finally spoke, bravado mixing with fear. There was a moment of hesitation, a crack in their confidence. "We're just," he barked back, his voice strong as thunder. Anger surged through him, fueling his resolve. A hint of defiance flickered in the shadows, one of the others stepping forward. "You don't understand. Times are hard. We didn't mean any harm." His heart softened, the defiance in their eyes all too familiar. He felt a different kind of battle surfacing, one not of strength but of sympathy. They were young, lost, staring desperation dead in the face, much like he once had. Visions of his own past flickered, a time when hunger gnawed at him, forcing him to make choices he regretted. He had been weary of the world then, a few bad months turning into a spiral. He felt it within them too, the claws of anxiety gripping their hearts, leading them down paths of despair. "Listen," he said, lowering his rifle slightly but keeping it steady. "I know what it's like to be hungry. You want to eat, work for it. Plant, reap." The leader questioned, uncertainty creeping into his expression. "I'm offering you a chance." He paused, gauging the reactions of the three. "You don't have to steal. I'll feed you, but you have to work the land." Silence enveloped them, a tense standoff looming between fear and hope. The flickering fire illuminated faces caught in uncertainty. The warmth of the flames stood in stark contrast to the chill creeping into their hearts. "Look, it's not like we have many options," the youngest one finally interjected, glancing at his companions. The leader hesitated, glancing from the farmer to the flickering flames. There was an unspoken plea for understanding in the air, a bridge being forged between two different worlds. "Fine," he sighed, the flicker of resignation mingling with something like relief. "Tomorrow at dawn. But if this goes sideways, it won't," the farmer promised, the weight of responsibility rushing over him. The trio nodded slowly, their laughter replaced with hesitant camaraderie as they retreated into the twilight, shadows blending with the night, whispers lost in the wind. Dawn broke over the horizon, painting the world in hues of orange and gold. The farmer stood at the edge of his field, heart thumping in his chest, waiting. The sound of footsteps crunched through the soil, and one by one the three figures emerged uncertain, yet emboldened by the dawn. Each approached hesitantly, their eyes scanning the fields, the potential stretching out before them like a canvas beckoning for color. The leader asked, hands hung limp at his sides. The farmer guided them through the process, demonstrating how to prepare the soil, digging deep to expose nutrients hidden beneath the surface. "This field is alive, better than any grocery store." Their hands moved alongside his, some more able than others, yet in this shared venture faces began to shift. They began to smile, with laughter breaking the silence in fresh waves, moments of triumph woven throughout the morning as seeds were sown. By noon, the sun blazed bright and hot. Sweat glistened on their foreheads, yet it was a good burn. The rhythm of work eased their tension. They spoke stories less guardedly now, about their lives and their struggles. With each shared tale, there came a hint of vulnerability, their pasts no longer shrouded in shame, instead revealing the raw threads that stitched them together. Hours slid by like water flowing downstream, laughter mingling with shouts of encouragement. What once felt disconnected began to take shape. The cornfields became the backdrop of something beautiful, a kinship forged through sweat and toil. The farmer felt it blossom, the young men leaving their shadows behind, stepping into the light of possibility. Days turned into weeks, the rising sun heralding new beginnings. Soon, the fields transformed under their shared labor, green spreads of corn swaying with vibrant life. What started as a desperate attempt to survive morphed into something greater. This was not just a farm, it was an evolving family built on trust and strength. Yet the threat of darkness never truly disappeared. Late at night, as the moon cast its glow over the fields, uneasy thoughts crept back, shadows lurking just beyond the edges of their newfound bond. Would those same figures return? One night, while the air chilled against their skin, the farmer gathered the three under the canvas of stars. He asked, his voice a low murmur across the stillness. A ripple of laughter erupted, creating warmth that chased away shadows. The name felt right, resonating deep within them. And as they huddled closer, filled with purpose and a vision for tomorrow, their thoughts turned towards what they could accomplish, their legacy intertwined with the land. But shadows don't simply disappear. One stormy evening, as the thunder voiced concerns and lightning cut through the black sky, the air hung thick with tension. The winds howled like restless spirits, and the farmer felt a familiar chill. Suddenly, through the deafening storm, there came a knock, a loud pounding on the farmhouse door. Heart racing, he looked to the three young men, determination igniting like fire in their eyes. "Stay here," he commanded, and with that he ventured into the dark. As he opened the door, fierce winds grasped around him, rain drenching his clothes. There, soaked through and wild-eyed, stood the three shadows he had faced so many nights ago, their intentions clear as day, fueled by the storm's chaos. The leader shouted, breathless. "We didn't come to steal." He interrupted, anger flaring. "Is this what you've become?" The resolve in their eyes faltered, but deep within he noticed the same vulnerability from before. "Please," the leader continued, desperation pouring from his voice. "We're not here to rob you. Some men are after us." Fear gripped him, but the flicker of empathy couldn't be snuffed out. He glanced over his shoulder to where the three young men stood inside, waiting, hearts racing. In that moment, the storm blurred into the urgency of life's struggles, the very reason they had come together to begin with. "All right," he said, steeling his resolve. "Come inside, but no more stealing." The faces of the four young men glowed with relief as they stepped into the warmth of the farmhouse, their burdens lightened by shared fellowship. As the storm raged outside, they found comfort in unity, laughter coursing through the halls, echoing off the walls. Each voice intermingled with dreams of what they would build together, a sanctuary formed not just of crops but of trust, woven into the fabric of their days. Time passed, and soon, with the dawn of each new day, they faced the uncertainties of life together, navigating through storms, both literal and metaphorical. They learned to lift each other up, to protect their bond like the precious earth they had come to cherish. When harvest time arrived, the field stood proud and bountiful, a testament to resilience, hard work, and the ties that bind people together. The sun bathed their triumph in golden light, and as they shared stories under the wide sky, laughter floated through the air. On that day, the farm was not just a piece of land. It has become a home thriving beyond cold calculations of yield. It thrummed with life and warmth, a place cultivated not only by hands working the soil but by hearts intertwining, crafting a legacy that would be told for generations to come. And as they stood side by side, stronger than the shadows that once haunted them, they knew they were finally, truly free. The farm appeared untouched under the moonlight, its fields stretching endlessly, shadows pooling in the tall cornstalks. An eerie stillness hung in the air, as if the land itself was holding its breath. But beneath that serene surface, something was stirring a tension that coursed through the soil and hung in the heavy night air. The farmer stood at the crest of a hill, his silhouette sharply defined against the twilight. He watched carefully, a sentinel in the dark, heart pounding with the weight of uncertainty. Days had passed since he first noticed them, footprints in the soft earth, signs that intruders had come into his fields under the cover of night. Each morning brought fewer crops, stolen away as he tossed and turned in his sleep, worrying that he wouldn't be able to feed his family. He gripped his flashlight tightly, its beam steady and unwavering. He had heard stories of others like him who had faced thieves' desperate souls drawn to easy pickings in the heart of the countryside. Those stories echoed in his mind as he recalled how fragile life could be on a farm, how quickly everything could slip through your fingers. The farmer took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the earthy scent of the night. He wouldn't let this go unchecked, not again. With every step, he felt the familiar crunch of gravel beneath his boots, grounding him in purpose. Suddenly, he spotted a flicker of movement near the edge of the woods bordering his property. His heart raced. Was it an animal, or something far more sinister? He edged closer, creeping through the shadows, not daring to make a sound. As he neared, he could see the outlines of figures huddling around a small fire, a scene that sent a chill down his spine. Laughter erupted from their circle, the kind that felt entirely out of place in the silence of the night. It was wild and carefree, echoing off the trees like an unsettling chorus. One figure leaned close to the fire, illuminating a face weathered by life, a face that revealed desperation beneath the bravado. The leader of the group boomed and the others laughed, a sound sharper than the crackle of the flames. "I saw that corn out there." The farmer's breath hitched. Anger surged within him, the kind that ignites when you feel someone violating not just your property but your very essence. He gripped the flashlight tighter, reminded of the countless hours spent tending to each stalk, nurturing every leaf and ear. This was not just his livelihood, it was his heritage, and he wasn't about to let it be stolen away in the dark. He roared, stepping from the shadows, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom like a sword. Startled, the group froze, eyes wide as the laughter dissolved into uncertainty. Fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across their faces, revealing expressions caught torn between bravado and fear. The biggest of them, wearing a hood pulled low, stepped forward. The farmer interrupted, anger radiating from his voice. "Taking what doesn't belong to you." "Relax, man," the leader replied, words dripping with false confidence. "We're just trying to survive out here. You got plenty." The frustration boiled within him. Every ear represents hours of labor, sweat, and hope. With each confrontation, the shadows around them seemed to shift, pleading for understanding amidst the tension. The leader's bravado wavered, replaced by uncertainty mixed with desperation. The flickering firelight revealed the outlines of their faces hardened by hardship, but there was also a flicker of vulnerability among them. "I get it," the leader said slowly, a hint of realness creeping into his voice. "But times are tough." The farmer's heart softened slightly. He could see it now. These weren't just thieves. They were lost souls, drifting in a world that had turned its back on them. He understood life's cruelty. It was a struggle all too familiar. Years ago, he had faced similar decisions when despair loomed over him. "Listen," he said, lowering his voice, threading caution with kindness. "I know what it's like to fight for survival. I've been there, but stealing won't fill the void. I can help you. Come back tomorrow and I'll teach you how to earn your keep." The group exchanged furtive glances. Their initial bravado cracked. There was a hesitation, a crucial moment where doubt and hope danced in the air. The smallest among them asked, skepticism lacing his tone, "Yes, I can give you food, but you have to earn it." They stood there, teetering on the edge of a choice that could change everything. Finally, the leader sighed, visibly deflating. "Fine, we'll come back." As they melted back into the shadows, the farmer felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. Maybe he could offer them a lifeline, a chance to escape the cycle of despair, even if just for a moment. Dawn arrived with the sun breaking over the horizon, golden rays illuminating the dew-kissed fields. The farmer waited, anticipation curling in his gut. Footsteps crunched through the earth, shaky but resolved. He spotted the trio from the night before, their faces drawn but determined as they approached. He asked, noting the tension in their bodies. "Yeah," the leader replied, voice calmer than last night, hope gingerly making its way into the cracks. They looked around, taking in the sprawling fields of promise, the pungent scent of rich soil. "First," he began, "you need to understand what you're working for. These crops are not just food, they're life." With each lesson, they learned the nuances of the land, gaining respect for its rhythms. He guided them through planting, shared stories of seasons past, all the joy and heartache embedded in the soil. Their hands worked alongside his, sweat mingling with laughter, their spirits beginning to lift. As the days turned into weeks, they shared stories of their lives, the struggles that led them here, hopes lost and found among the rows of corn. They were no longer just thieves. They were brothers in arms, fighting for a future together. One evening, while the sun set in hues of pink and purple, the farmer looked around and felt a weight lift. The pulse of life around them throbbed with potential, a family forged not by blood but by shared struggle. But not every shadow could be banished. One evening, as they wrapped up a day of hard work, the air suddenly thickened. A figure appeared on the edge of the field, watching them. The farmer felt a jolt of panic. This wasn't just any stranger. It was a familiar face from that haunting night. "Stay here," he said quietly to the group before striding towards the figure. As he neared, the moonlit features grew clearer. It was a rival farmer from down the road, eyes narrowed in warning. He snapped, voice laden with contempt. "They're not thieves anymore," the farmer replied, a fierce protection rising within him. The rival scoffed, steely eyes narrowed. "They could ruin you, ruin your farm." The farmer's gaze hardened, feelings of anger mixing with empathy. "I do know. I've seen their struggles just as I've struggled." The rival shook his head, making a sound of frustration. "You'll regret this." The farmer watched as the figure retreated into the shadows, leaving him with a mix of anger and crippling doubt. Would this be the end of his newfound family? Would they falter, fall back into the darkness he had pulled them from? As days turned into weeks, every moment became a testament to perseverance. Together they nurtured the soil, a bond emerging that went far deeper than he anticipated. The farm thrummed to life. Days of work morphed into a routine of resilience, but whispers of concern floated in the air, heavy with uncertainty. Every evening when the sun dipped low, he found himself glancing at the horizon, his heart racing with a blend of hope and fear. Then came the final day of harvest, a day marked by sweat and laughter, the culmination of all their hard work. They gathered the corn, filling baskets to the brim, joy bubbling in their chests. One of the younger men shouted, a wide grin splitting his face. Standing in that field, a collective joy washed over them, the fears cast aside like fallen leaves. The once quiet farm was now alive with energy, a thriving testament to hard work and community. But that night, as the stars twinkled overhead, they heard distant voices approaching. The laughter ceased, a shroud of apprehension falling over the group. The farmer warned, gripping his flashlight, stepping forward as the shadows closed in. The figures emerged from the darkness, 3 men, faces twisted in disdain, figures draped in contempt. The farmer steadied himself, heart thundering in his chest. "You've made a mistake, old man," the leader said, voice low and dangerous. "Get off my farm," the farmer replied, voice firm but steady. With every breath, he felt the weight of the new family beside him, young men who had once been lost, now united in a purpose larger than any of them. "What are you going to do?" The leader scoffed, confidence dripping with arrogance, but the farmer took one step forward. "They are not thieves," he declared, authority ringing through the air. "They are brothers now." In that moment, something shifted, their unity forged in the heat of the sun, the struggles they faced together fueling their fire. Standing shoulder to shoulder, the group became a wall of strength, a new family ripe for battle. The leader seemed taken aback, the sharpness of his words losing their venom as uncertainty flickered in his eyes. The shadows moved closer, but the farmer felt the warmth surrounding him, birthed from a hope that had flourished despite the darkness trying to invade. "Get off my land," the farmer demanded with unwavering strength. And as if the air had been threaded by the tension, something magical happened. The figures began to retreat, uncertainty now coating their bravado like a thin veneer. They melted back into the night, leaving behind a sense of uneasy victory. Standing in the glow of the moonlight, the farmer turned to the young men beside him, a band of brothers, no longer lost in the darkness. That night, as they gathered around the fire, sharing tales of courage and dreams anew, the farm that had once looked so silent now pulsed with the rhythm of life. No longer just a piece of land, it had transformed into a sanctuary. The cornfields whispered of triumph, weaving stories through the rustling leaves, tales of resilience etched deep into their very roots. The future awaited, limitless and bright. The farm would never know silence again. It would forever echo with the laughter and voices of those who were bound together, not just by land, but by the promise of a tomorrow forged in unity and strength. The moon hung high, casting silver beams over the fields, illuminating a scene that looked tranquil at first glance. The farm appeared silent, stoic rows of corn standing at attention, swaying gently in the evening breeze. A few fireflies danced lazily in the dark, their flickers creating a calm ambience that wrapped around the landscape. But beneath this facade of serenity, A storm brewed and the farmer remained on high alert, heart pounding, senses heightened. For weeks, he had noticed the signs rustling in the night, footsteps in the soft earth and shadows flitting just beyond the edge of the field. Crops were disappearing overnight, and with each dawn his worries deepened. Fear had sown itself into the very fabric of his thoughts, whispering doubts that clawed at his resolve. This land was his life, his legacy. He had tilled this soil and watched the seasons change, but as he grasped the coffee cup in his calloused hands, more bitter than the brew within, he contemplated all that was at stake. He stood by the barn, listening, every sound magnified in the oppressive stillness. It was a night like any other until his instincts kicked in, and an overwhelming sense of unease settled in his gut. The world around him seemed to fade as he focused on the single flicker of light that drifted from the edge of the woods, a reminder that danger hovered just out of sight. A loud crash echoed from the direction of his crops, breaking the calm like glass shattering in the night. His heart raced. Someone was here, and they were taking what was his. Without a second thought, he tightened his grip on the flashlight tucked securely in his belt and stepped forward into the shadows. As he moved closer, he ducked behind a cluster of corn stalks, breathing in the rich scent of the earth. The thick foliage offered cover, but his heart thudded wildly in his chest. Peering through the leaves, he finally caught sight of them, three figures huddled near the edge, their faces illuminated by the glow of a small fire. They were laughing, their voices low and conspiratorial, but the laughter rang hollow, echoing off the barn like a warning bell. "Just grab it all, man," said one of the men, tall and scruffy, excitement palpable in his voice. "We can sell it all." Anger surged through the farmer's veins, hot and molten. How dare they invade his sanctuary, treating it as if they were entitled to what he had sweat and sacrificed for. This was not just some land, it was his family's legacy, a tapestry of memories woven through years of hard work. With resolve solidifying in his gut, he took one last breath, steeling himself for the confrontation ahead. He shouted, voice booming through the night, snapping their laughter like a twig. Their heads snapped up, eyes wide with surprise. The man who had been directing the others froze, anger flashing across his face before retreating behind a curtain of fear. He spat, trying to regain control. "I'm the farmer," he replied, stepping out from the shadows, a voice steady with authority. "And this is my land," taunted the leader, puffing out his chest. But the bravado was thin, like a film stretched too tight. The flicker of doubt beneath the bravado was evident, and the farmer could see that raw desperation in their eyes. With that spark of understanding, the tension shifted. "Listen," he said, keeping his voice firm and calm. "I know things are tough. I know what it feels like to struggle." His words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. The smaller man shuffled his feet, glancing at the ground. "What do you care?" "Every ear of corn is a promise," the farmer responded, passion igniting his words. "A promise of family meals, of children laughing in the fields." The silence that followed was thick, binding the four men in shared uncertainty. The leader, now hesitating, glanced around as though calculating his next move. He finally asked, a hint of curiosity creeping in. "Work for it," the farmer offered, hope flaring in his chest. "Come back tomorrow, help me in the fields, and I'll feed you. You can earn what you take instead of stealing it away." The leader challenged, narrowing his eyes suspiciously. "More than I can put into words," he replied, sincerity pouring from his heart. The night was heavy with the weight of choice. The leader looked at his companions, uncertainty flitting across their faces like shadows, but there was an undeniable flicker of something more, hope. Finally, they nodded slowly, that collective decision hanging in the air, fragile yet full of potential. "All right. We'll come back," the leader said, the bravado fading, leaving softness in its place. The farmer stepped back into the cover of the night, determined to fill that void with something stronger than fear. At the crack of dawn the next morning, the sun rose like a promise over the horizon, bathing the fields in warm golds and oranges. The farmer stood at the gate, heart racing, hands heavy with anticipation. Each moment stretched like the first rays of sunlight, illuminating the steps they would take together. Then he saw them, the trio from the night before, their faces tinged with uncertainty but flickering with determination. "So you're really here," he said, taking a deep breath, grateful for the second chance they had granted each other. "Let's do this," the leader said, taking a cautious step closer as if testing the waters. They worked side by side under the vast expanse of sky. The farmer showed them how to plant, how to nurture the soil, and the rhythms of nature that propelled life forward. He spoke passionately about the land, infused every word with the love he held for it. And slowly, the young men began to learn, not just about farming, but about the meaning of community, of trust, and of building something that lasted. Days turned into weeks, laughter mingled with toil at every turn. The air became thick with their shared camaraderie as they exchanged stories and hopes, relieved to discover that they were not alone in their struggles. The farm transformed around them, each ear of corn standing tall as a testament to hard work and new beginnings. One evening, as they gathered under the stars after a long day, one of the newcomers asked, "What do you call this place?" The farmer pondered for a moment, then smiled. "It's our sanctuary, our refuge." "Family," echoed the smallest of the three, his eyes brightening. That simple word altered something fundamental in their hearts. They were becoming more than just workers, they were a community. But just as they began to feel secure, darkness loomed on the horizon. News of their collaboration spread, and whispers of jealousy and anger began to permeate the small town nearby. Rival farmers, feeling threatened by their bond, plotted to force their fracture, the very foundation of their unity threatened by the outside world. The farmer felt the tremors of turmoil in the air as he walked through the fields one evening, anticipation hanging heavy as a storm cloud. He sensed it, the hostile gazes, the resentment, and the lingering tension of fear. The shadows cast by the setting sun felt ominous, as though something was lurking just beyond view, and then it happened. One night under the veil of darkness, a group approached, shadows descending upon the farm, fervor driving their movement. The farmer stood at the edge of the fields, facing the impending confrontation. The tension thickened around him, adrenaline surging as he grabbed a flashlight, ready to protect what he had built. He shouted, his voice strong enough to cut through the night. One of the rival farmers sneered, stepping into view, eyes glinting with malice. "You think you can hold this place together?" "They are not thieves," the farmer replied, standing tall amid the tension, heart pounding with a blend of fear and defiance. The leader of the rival group laughed, a hollow sound echoing across the field. "You'll regret this, mark my words." "You don't own this land," the farmer roared back, reflecting resolve rooted deep. "This is ours, built by our hands." For a heartbeat, the world trembled between anger and defiance. The young men from the farm stood behind their father figure, backs straight and eyes sharp, each feeling a fierce loyalty swell within them. "This is our home now," one of them yelled back, defiance lacing his voice. The confrontation charged the air with electricity, and as the rivals stepped closer, seeking to intimidate, the farmer's heart raced. But behind him, he felt the steady rhythm of unity, each breath synchronizing with the others, a heartbeat transcending fear. He shouted, voice ringing with resolve. They responded in unison. The farmer challenged, glaring at the opposition. "Then you'll have to take it from us." As the two forces squared off, an unexpected twist occurred. The sound of sirens echoed in the distance. The faint wail grew louder, illuminating the darkness, slicing through the tension like a hot knife through butter. Moments later, the headlights of police cruisers darted into view, illuminating the field with a stark, harsh glow. The rival leader spat, eyes wide with fear. In an instant, they turned and fled, shadows retreating into the night as they abandoned their plans, leaving the farm intact. As the headlights faded, the farmer spun to face the group behind him, heart pounding with a mix of triumph and relief. They had stood their ground, had fought back not just for themselves, but for something greater, a sense of family, unity, and home. One of them shouted, arms raised in victory. "Yes, we did," the farmer replied, a smile crossing his face. The following days were filled with renewed energy, laughter flashing through the air as they worked together, fortified in their bond. They were no longer just laborers. They had become stewards of the land, guardians of each other's hopes and dreams. Each ear of corn they harvested symbolized more than just sustenance. It was the embodiment of hard-earned victories, lessons learned along the way. Seasons passed, and slowly the farm flourished. They built a community, not just with crops but with shared values, respect, and the knowledge that every challenge brought them closer together. The fields thrived, bending under the weight of promise, laughter mingling with the rustling of leaves, crafting a new story. Underneath that wide sky, the farm stood far louder than in the silence of that night when everything began. No longer a place shaped by fear, it transformed into a sanctuary, one filled with memories forged through struggle, resilience, and an unbreakable bond of family. As the sun set over the horizon, bathing everything in a warm glow, the farmer stood amongst his brothers in arms, hearts beating in unison. They had weathered storms together, faced shadows, and emerged stronger, and now they stood as protectors of a legacy forged in trust and unity. In that moment of serenity, the weight of the world fell away, and he realized something profound. This was home. This was family. And together they could weather any storm that came their way. The farm may have once looked silent, but now it throbbed with life, laughter, and the certainty that they were never alone. The night air was thick with tension, a stillness wrapping around the farm like a heavy shroud. To anyone looking in from the outside, the fields looked empty and silent, the corn stalks standing like silent sentinels under the pale glow of the moon. But for the farmer, the silence was deceptive. He had been watching, waiting. He was in position. Each night for the past week had been a dance of uncertainty. As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows twisted and turned among the rows of corn. It wasn't just the harvest that was at stake. It was his very livelihood, the fruits of years of labor, sweat, and untold sacrifices. A stalk of corn, a row of beans, they weren't just crops to him. Each one represented hope, a promise of endurance against the fickle hands of fate. He stood at the edge of his land, gripping the old wooden fence post, its weathered surface rough against his palm. The fading light painted the barn in dusky hues, but it felt more like a fortress than a home. He felt every pulse in the ground beneath his feet, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. And then he heard it, a rustle in the distance, a low scraping sound that set the hairs on the back of his neck on end. He was not alone. The whispers of evening critters faded as his heart thundered in the quiet. He turned his head, straining to listen. Footsteps quiet but insistent were wandering too close to the fields. He took a breath, steadying his nerves, and moved slowly toward the sound, every instinct kicking into high gear. A flash of flickering light caught his eye near the edge of the woods. A fire. He squinted into the darkness, focusing, suddenly aware he was not just facing an annoyance or mischief makers. He was staring down a threat. The silhouettes danced in the firelight as he neared. Their laughter rang out, carefree yet unsettling, a stark contrast to the grounded seriousness that weighed him down. "Come on. Get what you can." One voice called, loud and brash, demanding attention. The farmer clenched his jaw, willing himself to remain silent to gather more information. He crouched low, heart pounding like a hammer against the cold grip of fear. As he peered through the stalks, he caught sight of them, three figures, ragged and wild in their attire, loitering around a small campfire, consumed by greed and urgency. "Dude, if we fill the truck, we can sell it easy." Another voice interjected, stifling a laugh. Rage clenched his gut. How could they think that his hard work was theirs for the taking? Each darting glance and conspiratorial exchange fueled his determination. This land wasn't just dirt and plants. It was life. It was everything he cherished. He had to act. Just as he was about to emerge from his hiding place, a rush of memories surged through him, lost seasons, droughts that nearly claimed his farm, and sleepless nights spent praying for rain. The thought of these intruders laughing in the very place he poured his heart into shattered him. He shouted, stepping from the shadows, flashlight blazing like a beacon. The beam cut through the dark, landing right at the center of their gathering with power. The laughter halted, eyes widening with surprise. The leader demanded, forcing bravado into his voice despite the detectable tremor beneath. "I'm the farmer," he answered, voice steady and resolute. Their arrogance melted away, replaced by apprehension. The leader exchanged glances with the others, uncertainty creeping in. He challenged, though his bravado wavered. "Here's the choice," the farmer said, confidence rising in his chest. "You can leave now empty-handed and maybe reconsider your choices, or you can start working this land with me." One of the others scoffed, obviously bewildered. "You expect us to work? For food, for shelter, for respect," the farmer replied, unwavering. "This land provides, but you have to put in the effort. If you want to eat, you have to earn it." A tense silence wrapped around them, thick and palpable. They hesitated, each weighing the gravity of the proposal. The leader's bravado crumbled, revealed as merely a facade under the weight of fear and desperation. He asked, voice quieter now, "Because I've been where you are. I've faced hardships you can't even imagine," the farmer answered, the honesty in his voice bringing unexpected weight to the moment. "You think I want you to rot in a cycle of fear like this?" With every word, he saw the flicker of doubt in their eyes evolve into something far more hopeful. One by one, they began to nod, relinquishing the masks they had worn for too long. "All right," the leader said slowly. "We'll give it a shot." "I'm not," the farmer promised. As they dispersed into the gloom, the farmer felt a sense of unexpected relief wash over him. He couldn't predict where this journey would lead, whether hope would bloom or be dashed against the stones of reality. But at that moment, he had chosen the path of connection. Dawn broke like a drum roll in the sky, casting golden rays across the fields. The farmer awoke anxiously, heart racing, anticipation pulsing through his veins. The sun peeked over the horizon, and each fluttering beam felt like a promise. Would they really come back? He could hardly believe it when, by mid-morning, they arrived. The youthful trio stood hesitantly at the edge of his property, faces still shadowed by uncertainty but alive with a spark of newfound hope. He called out, forcing a grin that felt sincere. They exchanged glances before approaching, wariness still clinging to them. The tallest one asked. "First we talk," said the farmer, gesturing towards a dilapidated picnic table, a remnant of family gatherings from years past. They settled down, still tentative but imbued with curiosity. "I grew up farming," the farmer began, slowly unfurling his story. "My parents worked hard to give us a life, but times were tough. I've faced losses that could have broken me. I've lost crops to storms and to pests, and I've learned that every decision I make has a ripple effect." The three listened, captivated by his tale, a narrative rich with sacrifice and resilience. They found pieces of their struggles mirrored in his experiences, paths intertwined by the threads of hardship. They felt the warmth of understanding blooming in the conversation, and for the first time in a long while, they could see hope glimmering through the haze of their pasts. "Today, we'll learn to work the land," the farmer declared, rising to his feet. "Planting, nurturing these are not just tasks. They are ways of honoring what we have." And so the day unfolded. Under the watchful eyes of the sun, they moved among the rows, digging in the soil, planting seeds that would become more than just crops. Each shift of earth was a step toward something profound. Laughter mingled with sweat, stories shared mingled with the songs of the afternoon. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples, they gathered together, exhausted yet exhilarated. The sense of camaraderie blossomed, each moment knitting them closer, forging bonds deeper than mere labor. But just as life seemed to settle into a rhythm, the tendrils of darkness swept in once more. Rumors spread quickly in small towns, like wildfire finding dry brush. The tension ratcheted up as others began to take notice of the unlikely partnership forming right on that farm. Over the next few weeks, word reached the farmer about a rival from the nearby town, one who ran a neighboring farm. This man had seen the influx of less fortunate young people working the land and felt threatened by their union. Around a campfire one night, the farmer gathered his three companions. The warm glow illuminated their faces, now tinted with determination. "We have a choice ahead of us," he said, voice low and steady. The leader asked, furrowing his brow. "There are people who believe you don't belong here," the farmer continued. "They will urge you to turn back, to abandon this to the hands of fear, but I urge you to stand firm in what we have created." The trio shared solemn looks, each of them feeling the weight of the farmer's words. As the days grew longer, tensions rose to a breaking point. One fateful evening, the farmer sensed it. His instincts buzzed with an urgency, foretelling something brewing just beneath the surface. It was a feeling born from years of hardship and prejudice, a whisper that urged him to prepare. Sure enough, that very night, a loud crash echoed from the barn. The windows rattled and shadows moved outside. The adrenaline coursed through his veins as he burst from the house, heart racing, flashlight in hand. He shouted, voice echoing over the calm night. He saw them 3 figures, cloaked in darkness, moving swiftly among the rows. He yelled, adrenaline propelling him to action. The leader snarled, stepping forward, hands clenched. A chill ran down the farmer's spine, but with every step forward, he felt the support of his newfound family behind him. The 3 young men, now brothers, eagerly stepped up beside him, their expressions fierce and determined. One of them shouted, standing tall, voice resonating with unexpected authority. The farmer pressed, "This isn't just a farm, it's our home." As the confrontation escalated, nerves flared and tempers ignited under the weight of those words. Something deep inside shifted. The difference between dreams and anger hung like a pendulum, each side testing the other. But in that moment of heated conflict, a deep noise thundered through the night, sirens slowly approaching from afar, illuminating the darkness like a glorious dawn. The figures exchanged glances, eyes wide with fear. The leader shouted, retreating back into the night, vanishing like shadows beneath the weight of fear. When the dust settled, the farmer turned to the trio, breathless but alive with adrenaline. "We did it," he said, heart swelling with pride. The relief was palpable, sweeping through them like a warm breeze. They felt invincible, having faced danger and emerged unscathed. That night they gathered around the fire, laughter ringing out against the backdrop of the quiet farm, voices echoing in the cool night air. Each story that was shared grew more vibrant, weaving a tapestry of camaraderie that painted their lives with color anew. In the months that followed, the farm flourished beyond belief. The bonds forged in adversity transformed into unbreakable ties. Each season brought fresh challenges, but with them came the strength to meet them head-on. They learned not just to plant and harvest, but to celebrate life, the bonds that made them a family, the dreams that pushed them forward, and the courage that shaped their future. The farm became a refuge, not just a piece of land, but a living legacy built on resilience and connection. As the sun set on another day, the farmer stood at the edge of the field, gazing across the landscape filled with life. The corn swayed gently in the breeze, its golden hue shimmering in the fading light. The laughter of his companions echoed through the air, a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could thrive. This was it, no longer a silent farm, but a life bursting with promise. They had transformed their world through hard work, friendship, and the knowledge that they were never alone. Together, they reassured each other that strength could turn any quiet night into a symphony of unity, resilience, and love. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the farm that looked deceptively calm. The fields, once vibrant and filled with life, settled into a silence that felt unnerving. The corn stood like sentinels, their tall stalks swaying gently in the night breeze, yet they whispered secrets that only the farmer could hear. He had sensed it for days, an uneasiness lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to strike. He was in position, a figure cloaked in shadows, heart pounding like a drum against his chest. The world around him felt alive, but it was the kind of life that hinted at danger. His fingers tightened around the handle of a worn shovel, its metal cool and familiar in his hands, grounding him in purpose. Something was coming, he could feel it, and he wouldn't be caught off guard. As he scanned the horizon, the sounds of the night enveloped him. Frogs croaked, crickets chirped, and in the distance an owl hooted, signaling the arrival of something sinister. He could almost taste the tension in the air, thick like smoke. Every rustle in the field sent shivers racing down his spine. After watching his crops vanish night after night, he knew he couldn't sit idly by any longer. And then he heard it, a soft crunching sound, almost like footsteps. He held his breath. Could it be animals, or the worst kind of intruders, the kind that preyed on hard-working farmers, taking what they didn't earn? He moved quietly through the shadows, heart racing, every instinct honed, ready for action. Peering between 2 corn stalks, he spotted 3 figures creeping along the edge of the field, their movements furtive, driven by the thrill of what they were about to do. The moonlight flickered on their faces, revealing youthful bravado mixed with desperation. They gathered around a makeshift lantern, their bright eyes glinting with mischief. "Come on. We'll grab what we can and be out of here," one of them urged, excitement thrumming in his voice. With every word, the farmer's anger simmered just beneath the surface. These weren't just thieves. They were young men clutching at fleeting dreams, blinded by their circumstances. He had been there once, standing on the edge of despair with no clear path forward. But standing by idly would not protect his land, nor would it give them the chance they needed to choose a better way. The firelight illuminated his resolve. He stepped forward, voice booming out across the dark. The figures froze, faces shifting from exhilaration to dread in an instant. The leader spat, bravado crumbling under the weight of authority. "I'm the farmer," he declared, pain sharpening his voice. "You can't be serious," the leader replied, trying to regain some glimmer of control. "It's just corn." The farmer stepped closer, heart pounding, breath steady but fierce. "Every ear of corn on this land is a lifeline. It's my family's history. Every stalk represents years of hard work and sacrifice." The tension hung thick in the air as the three perpetrators exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. The bravado of the leader began to wane, revealing that he, too, was terrified, not just of the confrontation but of returning empty-handed. The reality of their situation washed over them like a wave. The leader finally asked, his tone softening. "Help me instead," the farmer proposed, his voice steady. "Come back tomorrow and I'll show you how to work this land." One of them repeated incredulously. "Yes," the farmer replied firmly. "If you want to eat, you have to learn to plant and harvest. You need to find dignity in hard work instead of resorting to theft." They stood rigid, the group torn between fear and hope. The flickering light of the lantern reflected uncertainty on their faces, mixing with the shadows that danced around them. Finally, the leader nodded slowly, vulnerability creeping back into his demeanor. "Fine, we'll come back." "I won't," the farmer assured him, a twinge of belief igniting in his chest. As they melted back into the darkness, he stood still, heart thumping with a mixture of triumph and dread. The night had taken an unexpected turn, one that could offer them all a path forward. But would they truly return? The days passed slowly, the air thick with suspense. The sun hung low in the sky each evening, as the farmer anxiously awaited the arrival of the trio. He spent nights watching the fields, reflecting on how fragile life had become, reminded of the choices he had to make. Each dawn brought hope, but uncertainty niggled at him. When the moment finally arrived, he spotted them on the horizon, tentative figures trudging toward him. Their faces were etched with weariness, but there was something else, determination, perhaps, as they approached the farm. He asked, trying to keep his voice light. One of them chuckled nervously. "Let's get started," the farmer said, motioning toward the fields. Together, they ventured into the rows of corn, sunlight pouring down in rich, golden waves. He showed them how to plant seeds, cracking jokes meant to relieve their tension. Laughter mingled with the earthy scent of freshly turned soil, a sound that began to fill the air. Day by day, the farmer guided them, teaching them the nuances of farming, the rhythm of nature, and the patience it demanded. They learned to sow and to nurture, their hands digging deep into the earth, their connection with the land growing stronger with each passing hour. As the weeks rolled by, they became skilled workers, infusing their hope into the soil, inching closer toward dignity and self-reliance. Evenings shared around the fire transformed as they swapped stories. Laughter replaced tension, camaraderie replacing disdain. They learned about each other's lives, the struggles that shaped them, the choices that led them to that field. In the glow of the firelight, the wall between the farmer and his protégés crumbled, replaced by a bond that transcended their beginnings. But life, as the farmer knew too well, has a way of shadowing light. One hot summer night, as they sat together under a blanket of stars, the air thick with their laughter, reality crept back in subtle, insidious, and unrelenting. One of their neighbors asked, the doggedness in his voice catching the farmer's attention immediately. The time had come to confront the shadows lurking even closer. The farmer asked, feigning nonchalance, though tension tightened in his chest. "He's been spreading nasty rumors," the man continued, voice dropping to a near whisper. "Saying that with those boys working here, you've lost your mind." The farmer's stomach churned. He had sensed the whispers swirling like a storm cloud, but he had hoped they would hold off long enough for the men to really change. He pressed, anger simmering just beneath the surface. The man shrugged, a grim look on his face. "They're beginning to wonder too." And with those words, that shadow in the night jarred him, a figure creeping closer. Over the next few days, the atmosphere shifted. Tension hung heavy in the air. Whispers followed him through the streets, people casting furtive glances. It felt like a tightening noose. The farmer tried to remain focused on the work at hand, guiding the three men with determination, desperate to shield the progress they had made. But every night, a knot of uncertainty tightened in his stomach, coiling ever tighter, warning him that trouble was just around the corner. They needed something concrete to offer, the kind of proof that could silence doubters. "Tomorrow, let's harvest," he told them one evening, the weight of the decision hanging over him like a storm cloud. "We have more than enough for the market." Excitement flickered in their eyes, a spark that lit up faces once dulled by hardship. "It's a great idea," one of them said, clapping the farmer on the back, uniting them with a shared grin. But the shadows loomed. As the sun rose on the day of the harvest, a low rumble of thunder rolled through the distance, an ominous reminder that darkness often lurked where least expected. The farmer stood outside at dawn, well before the rising sun bathed the horizon in gold. Together, they gathered their tools, the mood buoyant with expectation. As they moved through the fields, the rhythm of harvest began to take shape. Laughter mingled with the rustling of leaves, and for a moment joy flooded through him, drowning the fears that had haunted his nights. And then, just as they began to fill baskets and crates, discord broke through like a thunderclap. A group of men approached, faces familiar yet twisted in disdain. The farmer's heart sank and the laughter died in his throat. He knew in that moment what was to come. The leader of the rival group shouted, stepping forward, eyes glinting with venomous determination. The farmer turned to his team, heart pounding. "Hold steady," he whispered, feeling the tension seize the moment. The leader insisted, feigning authority. "They work harder than any of you," the farmer shot back, voice steady even as anger boiled beneath the surface. Another voice chimed in, venomous and insistent. "Enough of this. You should kick them off your land or we'll be forced to take action." The threats hung in the air, a palpable tension electrifying the field. He could see the tension on the faces of the young men beside him, their confidence wavering. Righteousness and fear warred within his chest as he faced them down, unwilling to relent. "Get off my land," the farmer declared, voice unwavering, but uncertainty crept into his heart. But the rivals advanced, a pack fueled by contempt, refusing to back down. Threats escalated, tensions mounting to a breaking point. The young men stood resolute next to their protector, hearts drumming in sync with the chaos engulfing them. And just then, a flicker of movement caught the corner of his eye, a dark cloud spilling over the horizon, something far more powerful than even his resolve. He turned, breath hitching in his throat. Storm clouds gathered, heavy and ominous, the gathering winds threatening to sweep away everything he had fought for. Before he could react, the rain came crashing down, slicing through the atmosphere and soaking the ground beneath their feet. Thunder rolled like a freight train, intertwining with shouts as chaos erupted. Someone shouted from the rival's side, shouting over the din of the storm. And in that moment, as darkness swallowed the landscape, uncertainty cast a long shadow over everything the farmer had built. What would happen next? Would he be able to protect his newfound family, or would the storm, the chaos, drive them apart once more? The hearts of all who stood there hung in limbo, caught in a tempest both natural and emotional, a turning point teetering on the edge of disaster. With fear pounding in his chest, the farmer realized one thing: silence would no longer be an option. In the storm's rage, everything he held dear hung in the balance, and the fight was far from over.